He was abandoned to perish, bound to a frost-bitten pine tree marked and emaciated, his once proud eyes now shrouded in anguish. No sustenance, no comfort, no identity, only the wailing wind and the haunting stillness of treachery. No one arrived until an 8-year-old boy, whose heart was far too expansive for this world, strayed from the path and transformed everything. What he discovered was more than just a dog. It was a warrior, a testament to endurance, a vital connection to a father he believed was gone for good. The events that followed will warm your soul and renew your belief in new beginnings. Before we begin, please share your location with me. Share your country in the comments. I'm curious to see how far this tale reaches. If you believe in second chances and that animals deserve love instead of suffering, hit that subscribe button. What you're about to hear will linger with you for a long time. Snow began to blanket Silver Pines early that year, a mountain town nestled deep within the Colorado wilderness. The pines loomed like watchful guardians, while the wind whispered in soft, mournful tones. December arrived, enveloping the small town in a silence that felt almost oppressive. Icy gusts slithered through the narrow streets, winding around wooden cabins and penetrating coats, regardless of their thickness. The sky, a muted slate gray, loomed heavily above. In the Carter household, nestled at the forest's edge, the silence inside was even more profound than outside. Jack Carter sat alone on the school bus, his knees drawn up onto the seat, his red flannel shirt half buttoned over a thermal undershirt that fell short of his wrists. At 8 years old, Jack possessed the slender frame of a child who had grown taller without quite noticing it, a mop of chestnut hair that jutted out from beneath his knit beanie, and large hazel eyes that reflected the weight of months spent in sorrow. He remained mostly silent, particularly after his father passed away earlier that year in a search and rescue accident. Since that time, words had turned into delicate entities, easily shattered. As the bus came to a stop by the ranger outpost in town, Jack seized the moment. He quietly made his way to the back emergency door, slipping out while the driver was preoccupied with the noisy children at the front. His boots crunched on the frost-bitten gravel as he made his way down a trail shrouded in light snow. He had no plan, just a tug in his chest that compelled him to wander to a place where the world couldn't reach him. As he continued along the path, he reached the spot where the trees clustered closely together and the atmosphere became still, enveloped in the gentle descent of snow. He stopped to take it all in. Whispers of something faint drifted through the chill. A strained bark echoed, followed by another. His heart raced. It wasn't the growl of a feral creature. It was a call. Jack stepped off the path, moving carefully toward the sound, weaving through the towering pines, their branches heavy with freshly fallen snow. The forest lay in a hushed stillness, broken only by the rhythmic creak of frozen branches and a faint, desperate sound. He moved cautiously toward the spot where a large pine had been split by a storm, the trunk half fallen and dusted with powder. In the recess of its refuge lay the form of a dogged German shepherd, robust yet undeniably emaciated, its ribs subtly outlined beneath a coat of tangled black and tan fur. Snow adhered to its snout, while one ear hung, stained and lifeless. A heavy iron chain was looped twice around the base of the pine, securing the dog in place around its neck and chest. The chain had chafed against the fur, revealing the raw, scabbed skin underneath. The dog raised its head feebly as Jack approached, yet remained silent once more. It lacked the power. The dog's gaze locked onto Jack's, a golden hue clouded by fatigue yet devoid of fear. Within those eyes lay something profound, trust, or perhaps a silent plea. Jack crouched down, his breath shallow and quiet. "Hey," he whispered, extending his trembling fingers. The dog remained still, its gaze unwavering. Its breathing was shallow, each exhale creating delicate wisps of steam in the frigid air. Jack pulled at the chain, but it remained stubbornly still. He scanned the surroundings with a sense of urgency, searching for anything that could help him. All he found was a half-eaten granola bar tucked away in his coat pocket and a handful of twigs. The dog emitted a gentle sound, resembling a sigh rather than a whine. Jack knelt in the snow beside it. "I'll come back," he said, pressing a mittened hand against its side. "I promise." He rose and dashed through the forest, retracing his steps, stumbling over a root and grazing his palm. He continued on. He dashed through the back gate of the Carter property and sprinted directly to the weathered tool shed nestled behind the barn. His grandfather Daniel Carter was inside, meticulously arranging the rusted equipment along the pegboard wall. Daniel stood tall, his broad shoulders giving him a commanding presence. In his early 70s, he sported a full head of gray hair, and his face bore the marks of time, resembling weathered stone. He donned a plaid coat, weathered by countless mountain winters, complemented by a sturdy pair of thick leather gloves. An experienced forest ranger with more than 30 years in the field, Daniel was a man who rarely smiled, but when he did, it carried weight. Jack burst in, panting. "Grandfather, I require your assistance. The dog is present. He is in pain." Bound to a tree, Daniel furrowed his brows, a look of concern etched on his face, yet disbelief was absent. He refrained from inquiring how Jack had discovered it. He effortlessly lifted a hefty pair of bolt cutters from the workbench. Guide the path. They made their way back through the snow, Walter's breath forming a mist beside him as he trailed Jack along the narrow path. The boy's words were few, yet his urgency conveyed everything. Upon reaching the dog, Daniel came to a halt. He knelt down, carefully inspecting the chain and the positioning of the animal's eyes, which remained silent. "He's a canine," he murmured, gently brushing the snow from the dog's collarless neck. "One can discern his anticipation from the way he stands." Daniel grasped the bolt cutters, aligning them meticulously with the link. With a determined grunt and a single, forceful squeeze, the chain shattered. The dog remained still for a moment. Daniel rested a firm hand on its shoulder. "Take your time, my friend. You are now liberated." The German shepherd wobbled, its legs quaking, and managed to take 2 tentative steps before collapsing against Jack's side. The boy embraced its neck without a moment's pause. "We'll name him Kodiak," Jack murmured softly. "That was Dad's cherished bear." Daniel gave a single nod. "Appropriate." As they journeyed home through the snow, Daniel took one last look at the tree. The atmosphere of the scene left him feeling uneasy. The harshness of it all, the positioning, the kind of chain used, and the profound silence surrounding it. It wasn't the act of a reckless hunter. It was meticulously orchestrated. Returning to the residence, Lily Carter, Jack's mother, was coming home after a lengthy shift at the Silver Pines Clinic. Lily, in her late 30s, had dark auburn hair often gathered in a relaxed ponytail. She was tall and lean, a testament to her years of balancing motherhood with a demanding medical career. Her face held the gentle touch of kindness, yet her warm brown eyes often appeared weary. The absence of her husband had created an emptiness within her, and the extended hours at the clinic only deepened the disconnect with her son. She emerged from her car and halted, captivated by the sight of Jack leading the wounded dog toward the porch. Her lips parted slightly. "Jack, what is that?" Daniel appeared from behind him. "Rescue," he stated plainly. He found him. Lily knelt beside the dog, her instincts taking charge despite her shock. "He's freezing. We must warm him up quickly." As she placed her hands gently along the dog's flank, she paused. "There's a scar here. Profound one. This did not originate from today." She cast a fleeting look at Daniel. "This dog has witnessed a lot." Walter's eyes remained fixed on Kodiak. "So is Jack." They brought Kodiak in, wrapped him in towels, and placed him next to the fireplace. Jack remained beside him well into the night, his hand continuously resting on the dog's fur. After months of solitude, he finally felt a sense of companionship. The fire crackled gently in the hearth of the Carter living room, while snow drifted past the frosted windows outside. Night had firmly settled over the Silver Pines, pressing silence into every crevice of the town like a thick woolen blanket. Inside, however, A quiet energy stirred. Kodiak reclined on a worn patchwork blanket by the fireplace, his substantial form curled in a careful slumber. His tan and black coat remained moist from the snow, and his breathing was slow and steady, though now deeper than when Jack first discovered him. A new bandage lay across his forehead, while another was carefully secured just above his ribs, applied with the gentle precision of Lily Carter's skilled hands. Lily sat cross-legged next to him, a small medical kit spread open on the floor. In her mid-30s, Lily possessed a grace shaped by resilience. Tall and slender, she often donned scrubs or denim, her auburn hair left mostly unstyled due to her busy schedule. Her brown eyes, weary yet watchful, examined the dog's body for any additional injuries. During her internship years in Denver, she had worked in trauma triage. But tonight, for the first time in a long while, her hands trembled not from uncertainty, but from the fear that something delicate might shatter again in her son. Jack sat just inches away, his knees drawn tightly to his chest. He had removed his boots but left his coat on, as though he were ready to dash out at a moment's notice. He observed Kodiak with the respect one might hold for a hero coming home from battle. His fingers glided softly through the dog's rough coat, carefully steering clear of the bandages. "He hasn't growled once," Lily murmured, mostly to herself. "That's not normal. He's hurt," shivering in agony. Yet he remains composed. Daniel Carter stood in the doorway, arms crossed. His figure loomed in the dim light. "It's more than calm," he remarked. "He's alert. Pay attention to his ears. Whenever the house creaks, he leans in closer to the sound." Lily glanced up. "Do you think he's in the military?" Daniel approached and knelt awkwardly, resting one hand flat next to the dog's paw. Kodiak opened one eye and met the man's gaze, steady, unflinching, unafraid. "I think," Daniel said slowly, "this dog has experienced more than many of us." Jack was the next to speak, his voice gentle yet assured. "Can he stay?" Lily hesitated. "Darling, we have no idea about his origins. There might be a search report available." Daniel interrupted. "I'll reach out to Mason tomorrow. Please review the latest reports. However, if this dog belonged to an active unit, someone should have been searching for it by now. It worries me more that he lacks a tag or chip than if he actually had one." Lily let out a sigh. "At least until he recovers." She glanced at Jack. "But not in your room and not in this place." Jack's expression faltered a bit, yet Daniel stepped in. "What about the shed?" Lily turned to him. "The aged version, it's packed with equipment, and likely has some rodents. I will assist him in clearing it out." Daniel remarked, "The boy seeks direction, and that dog requires space. Creatures of his kind struggle to recover in cozy spaces." The following morning, beneath a waning sun and a sky still heavy with snow-laden clouds, Jack and Daniel began their tasks. The shed, nestled at the rear of their property close to the tree line, had once served as a workspace for David Carter, Jack's late father, for preparing the field and creating maps. The interior was filled with a jumble of worn camping equipment and weathered maps, ropes for climbing, lanterns casting a warm glow, and flannel jackets long neglected, still holding a whisper of pine in their fabric. Jack diligently swept the floor as Daniel meticulously reinforced the door hinges. They spread out a heavy wool blanket and brought in an old sleeping bag for Jack to sit on. Along with that, they carried in a shallow dish of water and some cooked chicken that Lily had prepared. Kodiak moved slowly, his movements cautious yet steady, his nose twitching at the familiar scent. In the dimly lit back corner of the shed, Jack stumbled upon a weathered metal box, its surface marked with the faded inscription, "Field Logs." He released the corroded clasps and sifted through a stack of notebooks until one captured his attention. Brown leather with the name David Carter subtly embossed in the corner. He opened it with care. Inside, his father's handwriting was steady and blocky, filling page after page with entries about the weather, trail conditions, wildlife sightings, and once mid-page, a small note. "Working alongside K9 Sergeant Kodiak, outstanding tracking capabilities." requires patience and effort, responds most effectively to a calm tone and hand signals. We saved an hour today by following the elk trail that Jack had frozen. His thumb pressed firmly against the. He glanced at the corner of the page, then looked up at Kodiak, who had made himself comfortable in the center of the shed, observing him silently. "Did you know my father?" Jack murmured. Daniel stepped into the swirling dust of snow, brushing it off his shoulders. "Did you find something?" Jack angled the journal toward himself, saying, "Look." Daniel squinted, adjusted his glasses, and read the note, his brows knitting together. "Well, I'll be damned," he muttered. He penned a piece on Kodiak. This Kodiak. He summoned him. Officer Daniel settled onto a wooden crate, his gaze fixed on the dog with a newfound seriousness. Such a name is not bestowed without careful consideration. If this is indeed the same dog, then someone is certainly not being truthful about his fate. Jack settled beside Kodiak, leaning softly against the dog's sturdy chest. "He's not merely a stray," he remarked. "He returned for a purpose." Later that afternoon, Lily entered the shed, carrying a thermos filled with warm broth and a plate of biscuits. She halted at the entrance, absorbing the scene of her son nestled next to an injured dog. The journal of her departed husband spread open between them. Lily set the food down and then knelt beside Kodiak. The dog remained still, leaning slightly into her touch. "You knew David, didn't you?" she asked softly. "I can see it, outside." The wind stirred once more, sending soft murmurs through the trees. Yet within the shed, a comforting warmth had settled in it, merely from blankets or broth, but from memories, presence, and an inexplicable bond. Kodiak closed his eyes for the first time since his arrival. Jack, observing him, offered a small but genuine smile. The snow outside was coated with a delicate layer of ice, glimmering under the late morning sun like shards of frosted glass. In Silver Pines, winter had a unique ability to cloak everything in beauty, even those aspects better left concealed. Within the confines of the shed located behind the Carter property, Kodiak adjusted himself on the blanket while Lily knelt next to him, her breath creating gentle wisps in the chilly air. She carried a flashlight, a stethoscope, and a satchel filled with antiseptic and gauze. However, it wasn't the recent injury on his leg that drew her gaze. It was the scar on his left shoulder, a subtle yet exact incision running parallel to the muscle, neatly healed, yet undeniably present. Lily delicately parted the fur and squinted her eyes. "That's a precise line," she whispered. "Not a wound." This was executed with purpose. Kodiak remained still. He gazed at her with unwavering composure. She cast a quick look back at Jack, who was bent over the pages of his father's open journal. "Honey," she said, "I believe this dog had a chip that was taken out." Jack gazed upward. "What does that signify?" Lily paused. "It suggests that someone wanted to keep him hidden." Lily Carter had previously been employed at a trauma unit close to Fort Carson, where she sometimes contributed to canine therapy programs. She recognized the appearance of a canine insertion scar. This one was just the same. Later that afternoon, as Lily made her way back to the clinic for her shift, Jack lingered in the shed with Kodiak. He bided his time until Daniel was busy chopping wood near the barn, then quietly slipped back into the house. He was aware of his mother's laptop password. It was her former badge number from the hospital. He entered the digital realm and settled comfortably on the living room rug, legs crossed in a relaxed manner. Kodiak's name reverberated in his mind. Uncertain of where to begin, he started typing. Sergeant Kodiak from the K9 unit in Denver. The initial search results were limited. Articles focused on dog training for police units and a local canine fundraiser, yet on the second page, a small headline drew his attention. "A tactical canine goes missing during an operation." He pressed at the piece from 2 years prior showcased a blurred image of a youthful German shepherd, its ears alert and posture unwavering. His fur was a deeper shade back then, and his eyes held a sharper clarity. Yet there was no doubt in anyone's mind that it was Kodiak. The piece reported that the dog had vanished during a secret mission close to Pike National Forest, just days following the death of his handler in the line of duty. The body of the dog was never found, no formal clarification was provided, and no subsequent reports have been released. The department had subtly announced that he was presumed lost. Jack gazed intently at the screen. His fingers quivered as he inscribed the name onto a piece of notebook paper. Sergeant Kodiak from Unit Echo is unaccounted for, he murmured. They abandoned you. That evening, Lily came home to discover Jack in the kitchen, holding the printed article. She absorbed the words quietly, her gaze moving over each line, the furrow in her brow becoming more pronounced. This validates what I observed, she remarked, lowering the paper. He had undergone training, and if he were to be declared lost in action, there might have been attempts to erase his existence. Daniel stepped in shortly after, shaking off the snow that clung to his sleeves. He observed their expressions. There's an issue. Lily presented him with the printed document. Kodiak was more than just a stray. He belonged to a tactical unit in Denver. He officially passed away in a Walter's jaw tightened, yet he remained silent as Jack glanced back and forth between them. What shall we do now? Daniel nodded slowly. We ensured his safety. Those who wished for his departure might be unaware that he still exists. Let's maintain that arrangement. In another part of town, the sheriff's office hosted a community meeting within the confines of the small town hall. Sheriff Mason Reeves positioned himself at the forefront, a man in his early 60s, with salt and pepper hair, exuding a stoic calm that speaks of countless winters endured, far more than most would wish to tally. With a robust physique and hands that seemed capable of splitting wood with ease, he exuded an effortless authority that commanded silence without uttering a word. Mason drummed a finger against the rim of the podium. He mentioned that we've received 3 distinct reports over the last 2 weeks. Paths in the northern forest, no vehicles in sight, and no hikers recorded entering or exiting. Merely an individual meandering in loops. Distant from the path, a soft whisper flowed through the space as farmers, shop owners, and teachers huddled together, wrapped in layers, many still wearing boots speckled with snow. Mason lifted a hand. I'm not suggesting it's perilous just yet, but I urge everyone to stay vigilant. If you encounter someone unfamiliar, be sure to report them, and avoid venturing into the forest by yourself, particularly to the north of the ridge. A woman at the rear lifted her hand, slender and elongated, with strands of silver hair neatly concealed beneath a beanie. Her name was Judith Marlowe, a librarian who also managed the community watch. Has anyone explored the old fire road beyond Dry Creek? She inquired. It's no longer included on the official trail maps. Mason nodded. We will, but if anyone's out there, they're being cautious. No litter, no smoke, no campfires. His voice took on a firmer edge. This is not the handiwork of wayward adventurers. As the meeting came to a close, Mason stayed behind. He massaged the back of his neck while he examined the tracks once more on his printed report. Boot treads that weren't deep enough to indicate a heavyweight, yet large enough to suggest an adult male. The direction of movement pointed south, heading toward the Carter property line. Back at home, Jack returned to the shed, clutching an old flashlight and a packet of jerky he'd saved from lunch. Kodiak greeted him with a slow rise and a single thump of his tail. I found your story, Jack said softly, sitting cross-legged beside him. And I think you knew my dad. Kodiak tilted his head slightly, ears perked as if acknowledging the name. Jack reached out and placed the paper clipping gently beside the dog. You didn't die, he whispered. They just forgot you, but I won't. Kodiak leaned in, resting his forehead softly against the boy's shoulder. The wind outside changed direction. The woods breathed out beyond the distant ridge. The boot tracks disappeared beneath a blanket of fresh snow. Yet within the quaint wooden shed nestled behind the Carter residence, a connection was blossoming, woven not from possession, but from shared memories, and neither would let it fade from their minds. The wind had ceased its howling overnight, yet the cold lingered, biting and relentless under a muted, pale sky. In silver pines, the trees stood silent, cloaked in horror, their boughs whispering above narrow game trails carved long ago and half consumed by the ever-shifting forest. Daniel Carter stood at the edge of the tree line, his breath pluming in the frigid air, one hand resting on the wooden stock of the walking stick he always carried when venturing into the back country. Next to him, Jack fiddled with his oversized coat, the sleeves rolled up twice yet still brushing against his knuckles. "We ought to be cautious not to overstep our boundaries," Jack remarked, casting a quick look over his shoulder. "What if Mom notices?" "She won't," Daniel replied, his voice low and steady. "I informed her that we are removing the snow drift near the old fence. We shall return prior to noon." He acknowledged the slender trail before him, where the delicate imprints of deer intertwined with something more peculiar, fresh, human boot prints. The woods enveloped silence, their footsteps in the snow produced nothing more than the soft crunch of far-off parchment. Daniel moved with a subtle ease, as though he were revisiting a location he had attempted to erase from memory. He had swapped his plaid jacket, typically worn in town, for a dark canvas coat, its shoulders worn and faded, and donned thick leather gloves marked by the polished creases of extensive wear. The path grew narrower, winding its way through dense thickets of dogwood and spruce. Daniel paused now and then to observe the prince's long strides, noting the flat-hue pattern of someone bearing weight yet trained not to drag their feet. Jack trailed quietly, Kodiak near him. The German shepherd's ears stood alert, his nose occasionally rising to sample the scents in the air. The limp had almost faded away, yet the scar above his ribs remained noticeable beneath the heavy winter coat. Daniel eased his pace and gestured toward a hillside partially concealed by a cluster of evergreens. There, up the hill, mostly concealed by brush and snow, stood a small cabin, weather-beaten, single-roomed, and hunched like a forgotten memory. The boards bore the weight of time, their color muted, while the windows remained shrouded in shadow. A weathered stovepipe protruded from the roof, long abandoned and devoid of warmth. Jack's heart raced as they drew near within. The atmosphere was calm and fragile. Shattered crates adorned the rear wall. A tattered tarp rested in the corner, marred and embedded into the floor. Kodiak carefully explored the baseboards, his body tensing as he approached the distant wall. Jack trailed behind, crouching low as his fingers grazed the floor. His hand brushed against a cold metal surface. He extracted it from a tangle of straw and refused. It was a fragment of a collar-sturdy nylon in a deep, worn black, featuring a clasp that has warped under pressure. The metal tab, weathered and faded, bore a solitary line of worn engraving, K9 Unit Echo. Daniel approached and grasped it gently with his gloved hands. He whispered, "The Echo Unit. This demonstrates it." Jack gazed upward. "It confirms what Daniel released." A breath escaping through his nose, that Kodiak was present, confined here, and that whoever abandoned him did not anticipate his discovery. The boy's fingers clenched the fabric. Why would anyone do that? Daniel averted his gaze, his tone heavier than it had been. "Do you recall when I mentioned that I was compelled to retire?" Jack nodded. "It wasn't merely about age," Daniel continued. "A decade ago, I stood before the county board, passionately opposing the new development permits that would enable private companies to intrude upon the pristine North Woods. I compiled maps, documented species, and reported safety violations. They overlooked each and every one of them." He gazed at the door, his breath creating a mist. "Then an individual from forestry submitted a misleading report claiming that I was no longer fit for service. They exploited my sorrow following your grandmother's passing to force me out." Jack scowled. "That's not fair." Daniel let out a humorless laugh. "No, but it's common." He stepped outside, his eyes scanning the tree line. "The cabinet's not marked on any official map. I've examined them all. Yet, it exists right where the old fire break road once ran." Kodiak lingered just beyond the threshold. His body remained still, alert. He faced east, ears twitching. Something had piqued his interest. Daniel trailed his eyes. This space is still in use, and they'd prefer to keep it under wraps. At home, Lily stood by the kitchen sink, rinsing a thermos under the stream of hot water. Beyond the icy glass, her gaze met only emptiness. The pale streak of snow and fence posts. She dried her hands and strolled to the hallway, lingering momentarily outside Jack's room, which stood vacant. The boots had vanished, and Walter's thick coat was nowhere to be found on the rack. She let out a breath, her lips pressed together. She grasped the cordless phone and entered the numbers. At the sheriff's office, Mason Reeves was examining the most recent wildlife camera footage. A grainy still from a motion-triggered sensor captured near the East Trail revealed a figure cloaked in heavy layers, carrying what appeared to be a large pack, and heading south. Without a face or any distinguishing characteristics, the telephone on his desk chimed. He responded with a low grunt. Reeves. Sheriff Lily's voice resonated clearly. Jack and Daniel have stepped out. I believe they've ventured into the forest. Though unspoken, I sensed a change in Mason's tone, shifting from casual to intent as he directed his attention toward the northern ridge. He likely stood. I'll investigate it. Your decision to call me was spot on. In the woods, Daniel crouched next to a section of disrupted snow. Jack edged nearer. That's the essence of Kodiak, he remarked. More ancient than yesterday, yet not born of today. Jack opened and closed his eyes slowly. How can you tell it's his? He pointed to a single tan hair stuck to a splinter in the wood. Because I understand how this dog sheds. Kodiak glided in a gentle arc, its nose pointed downward. In an instant, he came to a halt, paw raised, eyes fixed on a nearby tree. Then, he barked. Once sharp from the tree's base, a long piece of rope lay sprawled like a lifeless serpent, partially ensconced in the snow. Jack knelt and pulled it loose. A loop, a knot, a stake driven deep. They bound him here, and he whispered. Walter's expression soured, reminiscent of a lure waiting in still waters. Jack glanced upward, sensing the return of the wind's ascent. Kodiak stood next to Jack, his side gently brushing against the boy's shoulder, his gaze fixed on something invisible to them both. The afternoon sun lingered low over the silver pines, casting warm amber rays of light across the Carter property. The snow had formed a delicate crust, softening in certain areas, producing a subtle crunch with each step. In the backyard by the old shed, Jack crouched next to Kodiak, tossing a weathered rubber ball across the snow-packed ground. Kodiak, strong and focused despite his healing scars, bolted forward with a sudden burst of energy, sagging at midair and landing gracefully before circling back. Jack chuckled for the first time in months. Laughter erupted, its sound dancing softly among the pines. What he didn't see, and what neither of them noticed at first, was the shape crouched beyond the property's rear fence, half hidden behind a grove of spruce trees. A figure cloaked in a camouflaged winter coat and sturdy boots observed them with unwavering focus. His face was partly hidden by a dark wool scarf drawn up over his nose, leaving only his eyes visible and calculating. He grasped a small black camera with a cracked lens tightly in his gloved hands. As Jack hurled the ball once more, Kodiak came to an abrupt halt this time. His body tensed, and his ears sharpened attentively forward. He crouched close to the earth and emitted a deep growl. Not boisterous, but deep and distinct. Jack stood still. What is it, boy? Kodiak stepped in front of him, gritted teeth, unwavering gaze fixed on the trees. Then he unleashed a sudden, fierce bark that fractured the quiet atmosphere. The figure ducked and dashed away, while Kodiak surged forward, pulling snow in his wake with his formidable strength. Kodiak, hold on, Jack yelled, but the man was quick and familiar with the landscape. He vanished among the trees, gliding down the slope behind the property fence. Kodiak halted at the edge of the forest, inhaling deeply and moving in a circular motion. He didn't pursue any further. Instead, he came back with a piece of cloth in his mouth. Jack encountered him at the midpoint, his heart racing. What is that? He took the cloth gently, his gloved hands trembling. It was a scarf, or perhaps a piece of a bandana, made of rough material in a dark green hue, featuring a faint emblem stamped in faded ink, a depiction of an X crossing a pine tree. Faint letters below reveal the words Ironwood Collective. On that evening at the dinner table, the scarf rested neatly folded next to Walter's plate. The elderly gentleman scrutinized it beneath the glow of the lamp, his brows deeply furrowed. "It's been ages since I've come across this," he whispered. Lily, dressed in her pale blue scrubs, sat across from him with her arms crossed. "What is it?" Daniel glanced upward. "It's a mark from a faction of unlawful loggers that once worked deep within the Rockies. Ironwood Collective. Unlicensed and unregulated contractors operating outside the law. They breached safeguarded areas and traded timber using fraudulent documentation." Lily's eyes narrowed. "I thought they were arrested." "They just disappeared," Daniel remarked. "We pursued them for months. They operated swiftly and left no evidence. Many of us thought that someone was giving them a heads-up." Kodiak lay beneath the table, silent and watchful. He had remained by Jack's side throughout the evening. Lily stood to rinse her plate, then hesitated. "There is additional information." Daniel raised his gaze. "Could you clarify what you mean?" Lily slipped away into her bedroom, only to emerge moments later holding a small envelope. She placed it softly onto the table, and Jack instantly recognized the envelope. It had come in the mailbox that morning, yet his mother remained silent. Daniel took it in hand and carefully extracted the contents. A solitary sheet of paper, devoid of any address or signature, featuring only a single line rendered in bold black letters. "Ensure your son remains uninvolved in matters that do not pertain to him." The atmosphere grew still. Lily's voice was strained. "It seems that someone is aware of our inquiries, possibly has knowledge about Kodiak, and might even be informed about our discovery of that cabin." Daniel meticulously folded the paper, taking his time with each crease. "We're not backing down," Lily said decisively. "This is my son we're discussing, and it was your husband who lost his life in an effort to safeguard this forest." Daniel responded with a sense of tranquility. "Whatever Kodiak was entangled in, it's far from finished." Lily fixed her gaze on him, her lips forming a tight line, before shifting her attention to Jack. "You'll be indoors for a couple of days, no more fleeing into the forest." "But Jack," she interrupted, "I can't bear to lose you as well." Jack gazed downward, while Kodiak softly nudged his hand. Later that night, Daniel sat by the window in his study, the scarf laid out on the desk beside a faded topo map from his ranger days. He traced a gloved finger across the terrain, over ridgelines and creeks, stopping at a small unmarked square. "I know where they're hiding," he whispered. In another part of town, at the sheriff's station, Sheriff Mason Rees walked back and forth in his office. Earlier, he had received a discreet phone call from Lily, who detailed the events that had transpired and inquired if he had any knowledge regarding the symbol. Mason froze at the mention of Ironwood. Mason, in his early 60s, was as solid as the mountains that surrounded him, broad, weathered, and steadfast. His steel-gray eyes had witnessed the depths of both humanity and nature. A weathered leather holster hung over his shoulder, and the air in his office carried a subtle hint of cedar and aged coffee. He opened a drawer and retrieved a file from years gone by. Inside were grainy surveillance photos, tech reports, and a confiscated patch from the Ironwood Group. It matched the fabric Willie had described. He whispered, "Why now?" as he traced the word echo at the bottom of the page. The following morning, Kodiak felt a sense of unease. He walked back and forth in the shed, his nose quivering as if it were recalling a distant memory. Jack, still rattled from the previous day, huddled in the corner with a flashlight and the worn field journal. As the wind stirred once more, the beams of sunlight danced, casting shifting shadows upon the walls. Then he spotted it nestled at the back of the journal, a folded piece of map paper. It was inscribed in David Carter's handwriting, a root symbol that corresponded with the scarf, and beneath it, words penned in his father's recognizable script. "Et unit rendezvous fall back do not share." Jack gazed upward. "You knew," he murmured. "Dad, you knew about all of this." Kodiak shifted to his side, ears alert and poised, anticipating what would unfold next. The snow had thickened overnight, blanketing the pines in an eerie stillness that settled over the silver pines like a hell breath. Inside the sheriff's station, fluorescent lights buzzed above weathered file cabinets, and bulletin boards cluttered with grainy photos. Sheriff Mason Reeves leaned over his desk, hands braced on either side of a topographic map, a frown etched deep between his brows. Across from him stood Daniel Carter, hat in hand, his heavy flannel jacket dusted with melting snow. Lily took a seat next to him. Her jaw was set, the coat still zipped to her throat. In the corner, Kodiak sat upright and silent, his amber eyes alert, as if he too were contemplating what lay ahead. "This cabin you discovered," Reeves said, his voice gravelly. "It corresponds to a structure from an old ranger route that was decommissioned in '98. It's absent from any civilian map, and definitely not included in current patrols." Daniel nodded, indicating that someone preferred it that way. Reeves reclined in his early 60s. He had the physique of a retired Linib, a perfect neck, square shoulders, and short-cropped steel-gray hair. His uniform showed the wear of many years spent in the field, and his hands appeared capable of splitting firewood without hesitation. His unwavering allegiance to the town was beyond doubt, yet the reality now ate away at him. "I retrieved the permit records," he continued, "land access logs, and maintenance authorizations. It appears that a collection of recent entries bears my signature." Lily inclined her body slightly forward. "However, you did not sign them." "No," Reeves stated with a somber tone. "I didn't." He then opened a folder and pushed it across the table. Inside lay a photocopy of an authorization document. "Forest access signed 3 months ago." The signature appeared flawless at first glance, but a closer inspection revealed imperfections. Walter's gaze sharpened. "That is a counterfeit, and not merely an ordinary one." Reeves gestured, saying, "Look here." He directed attention to the name position just beneath the signature line. "Eric Boone, Deputy Chief," observed as Lily blinked at Boone. "He has consistently shown a sense of integrity. I have witnessed him bringing meals to elderly individuals confined to their homes." "Precisely," Daniel whispered. "A clever disguise can effectively conceal one's true nature." Boone had held the position of deputy for almost 8 years. A man in his late 40s, tall and clean-shaven, with neat brown hair and a reputation for calm efficiency. Always polite, always on time, yet never too visible. "Should we face him?" Lily inquired. "Not yet," replied Reeves. "We require more than mere suspicion." Jack arrived moments later, with Kodiak trailing closely behind. The boy grasped an object swathed in a weatherproof cloth, his expression solemn. He placed it on the table, unwrapping it with care. Inside lay a compact field recorder, marked with scratches yet still functional, its tiny red indicator light blinking softly. "I believe this still functions," he remarked. "We discovered it hidden beneath the ancient oak, the very one Dad used to claim could withstand lightning." Reeves leaned in, curiosity evident in his voice. "What's on it?" Daniel retrieved a compact speaker and jack from the depths of his coat pocket. The recorder was connected. Static filled the air, followed by a gentle clicking sound. Then a voice, low and angry, muffled, as if it emerged through clenched teeth. "If that dog appears again, you handle it. I don't care if it's microchipped, well-trained, or blessed by the divine. The moment it barks, we risk losing everything." A different voice replied with a hint of anxiety. "What if someone discovers the cabin? Then we set it ablaze. And if Carter's kid starts asking questions, we should remind his mother of what happened to her husband." Lilia's complexion turned ashen. "That is Boone." Reeves let out a breath. At last, we possess something. By afternoon, the sheriff had quietly devised a strategy that would keep Boone unaware of their suspicions. The strategy was straightforward: observe the response and be patient. That evening, Daniel and Reeves made their way back to the cabin site, equipped with a concealed wildlife camera and a decoy document, a forged map indicating revised patrol schedules. They placed it prominently within the cabin and remained on standby. Meanwhile, Lily remained at home, her gaze fixed on the front window, the envelope still neatly folded in her pocket. Simultaneously, Kodiak began to feel restless once more. Jack, perceiving the change in the dog's demeanor, extended the leash, but the dog declined instead. Kodiak nudged Jack's coat and made his way to the rear of the barn, with Jack trailing behind. There, tucked beneath a heap of old crates, Kodiak started to dig. Moments later, Jack joined in, assisting in freeing a second, smaller recorder. This one encased in plastic and twine, almost expertly concealed. Once back inside, they watched it again. Boone fears that Carter's dog may recall something. He mentioned that the animal seemed to recognize one of the cutters who attempted to. Last spring, if that mud gets anywhere near, it could bite through a fence line, and Echo's files were burned. Walter's hands clenched into tight fists. He has been aware for months. The last blow fell just before dawn. A concealed camera recorded a silhouette entering the cabin, taking the decoy map, and placing a phone call. His face flickered momentarily in the direction of the lens. Eric Boone. As dawn broke, the trap had ensnared its prey. At the sheriff's station, Boone arrived as always, clad in his dark green uniform, badge gleaming, hair meticulously combed back. He acknowledged the receptionist with a nod and proceeded toward Reeves's office. Unbeknownst to him, the two deputies lingered in the hallway and Kodiak sat quietly beside Lily. As the door closed behind him, Reeves activated the audio file. Boone's expression became unchanging, his jaw clenched. "You have no idea what you're interfering with," he said softly. "No," Reeves said, "but I understand what you are." He gestured towards the deputies. They advanced. Boone chose not to engage in battle back home. Jack stood next to the oak split by lightning, with Kodiak resting peacefully at his feet. Daniel approached them once again. "Your father would have felt a deep sense of pride." Jack remained silent, his gaze fixed on the woods, his eyes keen and observant. The tempest approached shortly after twilight, cascading over the peaks like a quiet wave, obscuring the stars and enveloping the woodland in a heavy veil of snow. Within the confines of the Carter shed, the wind wailed against the wooden slats while Jack sat cross-legged on the sleeping bag, Kodiak beside him. The boy's gaze darted to the small lantern perched on the shelf, its warm glow stretching long shadows across the weathered field gear. A palpable tension hung in the air, coiled tightly like a spring. Daniel walked into thermoses in hand, his steps deliberate and measured. Lily remarked, "You haven't eaten. Perhaps a bit of stew could sway your thoughts." He passed one to Jack, who took it in silence. Daniel appeared weary, his flannel coat speckled with snow, and the lines on his weathered face etched deeper than usual. His right hand flexed unconsciously, a signal Jack now recognized as a sneeze. "Are you sure he'll come?" Jack inquired as Walter's gaze locked onto his. "He has to. He knows we know. And if there's one thing that individuals like Boone dread, it's the prospect of losing control." They were quick to act. Just past 9, headlights flickered through the tree line. Soft, dim lights shrouded in a gentle snowfall. A shadowy SUV glided onto the Carter property, its engine fading into silence as the door swung open. Eric Boone emerged, his movements exuding a relaxed determination. He donned a lengthy black coat that draped over his uniform, with his badge shining brightly beneath his collar. He grasped a flashlight in one hand and a clipboard in the other. Boone, in his late 40s, was clean-cut and broad-shouldered, his naturally stern expression often misinterpreted as disciplined by those around him. Tonight, however, his eyes were keen, assessing, as a smile played at the corners of his mouth while he neared the shed. "Evening," he called, rapping once on the frame. "I heard the sheriff has been poking around, so I thought I'd touch base regarding the safety inspection. If you catch my drift." Daniel eased the door open, lingering in the threshold. "A humorous moment for one," Boone shrugged. The storm was approaching. It's essential to be meticulous within Kodiak. His body tensed up. Tail remains low with hackles down. Boone halted, his eyes narrowing. Still haven't set him down, huh? Jack felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He cast his gaze toward the corner where a backpack was meticulously positioned within it, a replica of the counterfeit map, the audio recordings, and the piece of scarf. Daniel moved to the side. Feel free to join me. Boone stepped inside with care, casting the beam of his flashlight over the surroundings. His eyes drifted from Jack to Kodiak and then to the pack. You've been busy, he remarked. Daniel crossed his arms. You might say that. Suddenly, Boone darted for the bag, but he wasn't quick enough. Kodiak surged forward, his form a whirlwind of energy, fangs exposed in a wordless snarl. He struck Boone squarely, sending him crashing against the wall. The flashlight tumbled to the ground. Boone fought desperately, his arm thrashing as he sought to grasp something hidden within his coat. Yet, Kodiak was already upon him. His jaws clamped down on the man's forearm, immobilizing him with a chilling accuracy. Jack sprang to his feet, retreating from the aged Kodiak. Daniel explained with intensity. Kodiak refrained from going further. He remained as unyielding as granite, his gaze fixed on Boone's face. Suddenly, the shed door flew open, and Sheriff Mason Reeves entered, his service pistol drawn and unwavering. "Put Boone," he said with an icy demeanor, "you are under arrest for conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and unlawful surveillance." Boone remained silent, his gaze fixed upward as he breathed heavily, the facade of his composure beginning to fracture. Reeves gave a single nod. Daniel assisted me in restraining him. Daniel relinquished the cuffs from his belt. As they held Boone back, Kodiak was released on command and returned to Jack's side, his tail low yet steady. Boone let out a bitter chuckle. "You believe you've halted something. You haven't even scratched the surface. Then begin your excavation," Reeves remarked, "or you'll find yourself laid to rest beside it." As the evening wore on and snow began to accumulate against the windows of the sheriff's office, Boone remained silent in his holding cell. Reeves stood outside alongside Daniel and Lily, meticulously examining the evidence. He identified an individual whom Reeves claimed attempted to propose a deal. "Who did?" Lily asked, her arms crossed tightly. Reeves paused before addressing Mayor Branson. Silence enveloped the room. Carl Branson had represented Silver Pines for more than 10 years. In their mid-50s, consistently seen in well-fitted jackets and gleaming boots. His smile graced every town ceremony, a constant presence that warmed the hearts of all who gathered. Charming, giving with contributions to the community, and recognized for his hearty laughter. Branson was the sort of individual who inspired unwavering trust in everyone around him. Lily murmured, "That's impossible." "No," Daniel replied softly. "It is logical. He authorized the permits, accelerating development more swiftly than anyone else, consistently offering a rationale for each oversight." Reeves acknowledged Boone's assertion that he was merely a messenger, stating that Branson was the one who financed everything, removing safeguarded areas, yielding results in regulation, concealing proof. As her husband began to inquire, Lily shut her eyes tightly. It appeared as though it was merely a coincidence. In a serene room further down the corridor, Jack found himself seated at a table alongside the sheriff's assistant, a young woman by the name of Dana Fields. Dana, in her late 20s, sported short blonde hair neatly tucked beneath a wool beanie. Her warm brown eyes reflected a calm and patient demeanor. Having grown up in Silver Pines, she returned after college, embodying a quietly efficient presence that often went unnoticed by the townsfolk. Yet this evening, she positioned herself next to Jack, her attention unwavering. "You possess great courage," she remarked softly. Jack shook his head. "I didn't do anything." "You did," Dana replied. "You noticed what the grown-ups overlooked, and you voiced it." Jack cast his gaze downward. "I was frightened." "Courage isn't the absence of fear," she stated. "It's how you respond when fear is present." He remained silent. Instead, He unzipped his backpack and presented her with the audio recorder. "If you require additional information, it's available." She nodded. "We'll ensure it reaches its destination." Outside, the snow kept cascading down. Kodiak perched next to the sheriff's cruiser, observing the town square where Christmas lights twinkled softly through the delicate white mist. Daniel arrived shortly after, placing a thermos on the hood. "You performed well today," he remarked, bending down to gently scratch behind the dog's ears. Kodiak raised his gaze, unwavering. "Your work isn't finished," Daniel remarked, "but I believe you've given it significance once more." The sun reemerged over Silver Pines 3 days following Boone's arrest, gently dissolving the sharp remnants of snow from the rooftops and allowing delicate rivulets to flow down the trunks of trees that had long been in slumber. The sky, once muted by the tempest, now unfurled in a striking winter blue above the mountains. In the heart of the town, the community hall stood transformed, its space cleared and adorned with fragrant pine boughs, fluttering banners, and swiftly occupied folding chairs. As news of the gathering circulated, Jack lingered by the rear entrance, fidgeting with the cuffs of his sweater. He donned dark jeans and boots that were meticulously dusted clean, along with the flannel shirt gifted by his father the Christmas prior to his passing. His hair was meticulously styled, yet one defiant cowlick had chosen to stand its ground. Beside him, Kodiak sat perfectly still, adorned in a new navy blue harness that showcased a freshly stitched badge. K9 Echo Unit Lily crouched behind them, her hand resting gently on Jack's shoulder. She was dressed in a navy peacoat and a gray wool scarf. Her face, though weary, bore the first genuine tranquility it had experienced in months. The shadows of sorrow lingered, yet they had taken on a gentler hue. Her voice carried a gentle warmth, yet remained softly subdued. "Are you prepared?" Jack nodded. "I believe Kodiak is." Lily smiled. "Then you are as well." The audience quieted as Sheriff Mason Reeves ascended the improvised platform, microphone grasped firmly in hand. "Greetings, Silver Pines." He donned his formal uniform, medals shining, shoulders held high. The silence that enveloped the room was not born of duty but of reverence. "We gather here today not merely to honor courage," he stated, "but to restore something we were unaware we had lost: trust." He motioned to the front row where Daniel Carter was seated, clad in his dark ranger's coat, his silver hair impeccably styled back. This individual once faced the overwhelming wave of corruption on his own. Now he joins us as the inaugural official advisor to the newly reinstated Echo K9 Task Force. Applause erupted, and Daniel acknowledged it with a nod, the faintest hint of a smile gracing his lips. Reeves continued. "Lily Carter, a mother, nurse, and advocate, stood her ground even in the face of threats. She reminded this town that justice doesn't always wear a badge." Lily stood for a moment, taking in the cheers before settling back into her seat with a deep breath. Then Reeves adjusted his tone, saying, "We come to a story that began not with a case file, but with a boy who followed a bark into the snow and discovered a soldier buried in silence." All attention shifted to Jack as the sheriff gestured for him to come forward. Jack ascended the stage, Kodiak moving alongside him in perfect harmony. The room remained hushed and motionless as the boy and dog became the focal point. Reeves knelt and opened a black velvet box. Inside lay a silver medallion, intricately etched with a star and a paw print. "Sergeant Kodiak, once a proud member of the Echo Unit, we extend a warm welcome back to you." He secured the metal piece to the dog's harness. Kodiak stayed still, save for a gentle blink, as if he comprehended Reeves' rise. "And to Jack Carter, the first civilian youth accepted into our K9 Junior Training Division, thank you for your bravery. May the connection you share with this dog serve as a source of inspiration for others, just as it has inspired us." The audience burst forth following the ceremony. The townsfolk congregated in small groups. Individuals. Jack hardly recognized the gesture of a handshake or the tussling of his hair, Yet it felt manageable since Kodiak remained by his side, a steady presence anchoring him amidst the throng. Daniel stood alongside Sheriff Rees at the rear of the room, engaged in conversation with two men dressed in dark suits. Among them was Agent Paul Denning, a federal wildlife investigator. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with closely cropped red-blonde hair and a slight stoop from years spent in the field. Denning spoke in a calm and assured manner as he examined the transfer documents that would ensure oversight for Silver Pines' forest permits in the future. As the crowd thinned, Dana Fields approached Jack with a laminated card and a patch. "This is for you," she said, her tone warm. "Your official Junior K-9 trainee badge." Jack examined it closely, his eyes filled with wonder. "Does this imply I have the opportunity to contribute to meaningful tasks?" Dana chuckled. "One step at a time, and soon you'll be in uniform." Kodiak licked her hand once in approval. As the afternoon waned, the Carter family made their way home, passing the cabin and the trees where Jack had once listened to the sound of a broken branch in the snow. Everything appeared transformed now, not due to any alterations in the surroundings, but because of their own evolution. Daniel steered the truck into the clearing behind the house. "Go on," he urged, gesturing toward the ridge. Jack emerged, Kodiak at his side, and ascended the gentle slope by the ancient oak tree. Snow still lined the edges of the slope, but it had begun to melt in patches, revealing brown needles and soft ground beneath. They sat together, boy and dog, overlooking the valley of Silver Pines as light spilled through the gaps in the clouds, turning the tree line gold. Kodiak leaned his head against Jack's side, his ears flicking at the distant call of a crow. "This once was the most sorrowful spot," Jack murmured, "in a place where it seemed all was lost." He glided his hand along Kodiak's back, fingers lightly grazing the metal. "Yet, it now seems like the beginning of something new." The wind stirred softly, bringing with it the aroma of pine bark and earth. Kodiak lifted his head slightly, gazing into the horizon. He remained silent. He stayed still. He simply observed, protecting the boy next to him. At times, those who wander guide us to our true destination. A hurt dog, a shattered boy, and an elderly man who clung to hope. In a world brimming with chaos and uncertainty, this narrative serves as a gentle reminder that miracles often arrive without fanfare. They manifest subtly through loyalty, courage, and love. Perhaps it wasn't mere chance that brought Kodiak to Jack, but rather a divine hand guiding them to their destined meeting. And perhaps, just perhaps, that same grace is at work in your life as well, unfolding in ways that remain hidden for now. If you hold the conviction that hope can emerge from the snow, that no connection is beyond repair, and that divine intervention still manifests through the courageous and devoted, then share this tale. Share your thoughts if it resonated with you. And if you believe in new beginnings, tap that subscribe button to explore more heartfelt tales of love, redemption, and the amazing beings that accompany us on our journey. Wishing divine blessings upon you and all those you cherish. If this story touched your heart, type amen in the comments and share with the world that light always finds a